Hi there, it's CJ Miller. I'm in Shreveport, Louisiana, across the Red River from beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. Please do come check us out. As I look out my window, I can see in the distance, a few blocks over, I can see uh, the Municipal Auditorium, and so many great musicians have played there. Now, I don't know if the lady that I'm going to homage today, I don't know if she ever played there, but so many people, so many of her contemporaries did. I'd be surprised if she never did. Uh, I know that. Yeah, I don't know. I know her big thing was just getting on board with just getting on board with the Grand Ole Opry. But anyway, so I don't know if she played there or not uh, when the Louisiana Hayride was going on. But uh, definitely, KWKH would have been an important part of getting her records played back to back to back. And I'm talking about Loretta Lynn, who uh, died today, August the 15th, uh, at the age of 80 years old. So that's a long time. And she worked pretty much as she uh, could. Like she just never wanted to stop working, playing and performing once she got started. It was so funny because she didn't really want to at first. And then her husband sort of forced her into it, and the first song that she did, and according to the movie and according to the the touring that Sissy Spacek, who played her in the movie Coal Miner's Daughter, based upon Loretta Lynn's book, the talk was that this was the first song that she ever sang in public. It was called "There He Goes." Well, I'm going to swap the pronouns a little bit and see how it works. It's called "There She Goes," as so. There she goes, she's walking away. Each step she takes brings heartache my way. He won her heart, I lost her some way. There she goes, she's walking away. Well, if I had cheated, and if I hadn't lied, I'd be the one walking by her side. I love her still, and I guess it shows the way I feel. There she goes. Well, if I had cheated, and if I hadn't lied, I'd be the one walking by her side. I love her still, and I guess it shows. She's walking away. There she goes. Okay, so well, that's just a really bad. I suck. I I think I was because I was trying to play the song in the key that she did it in. I would probably be more comfortable down here. There she, there she. God, no, there's just no way to get around it. I suck at this song. It was actually one of the first songs I learned how to the chords to, but yeah, then I just moved on and did other songs and stuff like that. But yeah, no. Uh, so I love a wide array of music, and I love rock and roll. I love folk. I love pop. I love metal. I love hard music. But also, my father. was just a great fan of country music, and in the 70s and 80s, you know, classic country, but also uh, there was a new uh, spin-off between folk and rock and uh, country. And it was sort of becoming a branch of music known as country rock, you know, kind of. And it was today. It's like we just think of it as new or modern country music because it's basically rock and roll with a country accent. Uh, but Loretta Lynn was from that era of music where country was country, and even as she even as she progressed through the 70s and 80s and started singing with more contemporaries like Conway Twitty, her sister Crystal Gale was was a performer who had a country rock sound, uh, you know, versus a more traditional uh, country. She had a lot of crossovers, but you know, still due to Coal Miner's Daughter, especially, uh, Loretta Lynn had a lot of crossover appeal, and that movie was so important. In the book, it was co-written. It was written, ghost-written for Loretta Lynn by George Vesey. I do remember that, and George Vesey really got interested in it because he was exploring writing a book on the hardships of the American coal miner in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and just everything, you know, black lung and all that kind of good stuff. So that her whole tone of Butcher Holler and everything that went on way back there, uh, way back then, and everything that's pretty accurate. That's not made up. I mean, you know, people would. Um, you know, they'd be dying at 40, 45 years old. You know, it's like those, you know, uh, yeah, breathing in all the dirt and ash from like just picking away within the mines. Uh, yeah, yeah. Uh, for instance, asbestos uh, fillers in the house and the roofs and attics and all over the place. Not here. This is a new apartment, but you know that causes mesothelioma, mesothelioma, mesothelioma. I don't know how to say it. It's a type of cancer, and it's a type of cancer that is only caused by asbestos. But this was very similar. You know, the illnesses that would derive from like, you know, excavating for coal or whatever. So um, George Vesey was very important in uh, tuning into the hardships of that life. And by extension, so was Loretta Lynn, who was the daughter of a coal miner. And yeah, you know. Um, anyway, so I will miss the fact that she's on this earth because even though I love my rock and roll music. She was just her music, Loretta Lynn. That's music that was just pretty much ever present all throughout my life, and I was a fan of it. And yeah, so she was known for some great songs. You know, "Don't Come Home and Drinkin'." She had a song called "I Want You Out of My Head and Back in My Bed Before the Morning Sun Comes Up" or something like that. And that had kind of a swing. That was almost a crossover dance. She um, had a few songs that really struck with the feminist right, much to the husbands or the men just not liking it. One was called "The Pill." Uh, although you know, birth control was great, and why not? But also, mm, I think secretly, uh, I think husbands probably did enjoy the fact that there was more available contraception and birth control, uh, such as the pill or various versions of it, uh, because 12 to 15 children are expensive in any family. So yeah, it's, you know, it's like, hey, you know, so the song made it seem as if pregnancy was a means to keep the wife at home, uh, one child after another. That's not necessarily uh, the case for everybody, but it was a little, it was a little. The way it was stated was a little bit, but but she was singing from that perspective. Hey, all I do is see a bed and a doctor bill, from pregnancy. Uh, blah, 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 So, uh, yeah. Um, and I don't think it was just that uh, there wasn't medical contraception, maybe a condom or something like that, but I don't, whatever. But yeah, and so whatever. Um, anyway, so that changed families. So uh, agriculturally, Um, but yeah, so what else did she do? She did. Um, Love is where you find it when you find no love at home. She sang that with, I believe, uh, Ernest Tubbs. You know, uh, then who was an uncle of my uncle in law who was married to one of my aunts. His name was Rusty Tubbs, my dad's best friend. Yeah, it was the Tubbs family. Yeah, that was. I hear that's what I hear anyway. Because a lot of my family back in the day they played at the Louisiana Hayride. I talked about that. So country music's kind of in my family's legacy, even though I'm a terrible musician. But yeah, but yeah. What else did she? We're talking about Loretta Lynn. She did some stuff with Conway Twitty, Louisiana Woman, Mississippi Man. That was great. Um, that had his bounce, his signature. That was him. That was his tempo all over the place, and she kind of sang with him. She did a couple of things with him also. He was one of her singing partners, and Ernest Tubbs. They sang some things together. But what people just loved Loretta Lynn's music, and she sang it all the way, like from the time that she started making records. She was doing new music up until just really within the last 2 or 3 years. She was doing more, as I think, just until she couldn't anymore, making appearances. She sang with another passed on favorite, Tammy Wynette, the first lady of country music, uh, and uh, and they did a whole album called Honky Tonk Angels with Dolly Parton. So the three greats, uh, and which was more true to country music uh, than, say, the trio that Dolly Parton did with Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt, which was always more on the folky crossover rock kind of stuff and less country, even for Dolly Parton. But she, with the Honky Tonk Angels, she really did, because there were three country musicians that were not singing in the country rock genre at all. They were really country musicians. They really uh, were able to really stay within that. And it was a good album. It was a good album. I wonder why they never followed up or did anything else, but they did great. I will say, Tammy Wynette, she did do a really kick-ass club mix with um, the KLF in the '90s called "Justified and Ancient." There's a whole story on that in my videos. If you scroll down, you'll see I got obsessed with the KLF a few months ago and just went on this thing. As a matter of fact, I'm still reading the book because it's a huge volume, and I read books episodically. Like I'll read some on this book, and then I'll switch over and I'll read some of another book and some of another book. So I've got 3 or 4 books that I read at any given time when I'm reading. So that's the way I do it. I don't just read like one book and then I'm done reading this book and I have to finish this book before I can start another. No, I can read it in episodes. That's I'm not studying. I'm not cramming. I'm not trying to make book reports. I can enjoy my leisure as I want to. What? Yeah. Of course, we get uh, "Don't Come Home a Drinking with Lovin' on Your Mind," and then that song was a response to, or was responded to by her brother, who actually I forget his name, but he sang a song called "I Come Home with Drinking with Lovin' on My Mind," and it was a response to that one. This is why I come home because this is, you know what I mean. So it's kind of like, yeah, songs would do that. There was Kitty Wells did a song. It wasn't God who made Honky Tonk Angels, and it was a response to a much earlier song uh, called Honky Tonk Angels or something like that. I didn't know God made Honky Tonk Angels, and her response was, "It wasn't God who made Honky Tonk Angels," you know. And so that's one of the things that country music used to allow way back in the country music. The full on stage of it is it was music which allowed for conversation between spouses and men and women, and to have this conversation and things that you wouldn't really say uh, all the time and face to face or whatever. A lot of times you would just, had these anxieties or these thoughts, and maybe you didn't argue with your spouse because it wasn't your place to argue with your spouse and tell your spouse how to live, especially if you were the wife and the husband was the breadwinner, and there weren't too many options. Was the music gave men and women a chance to have that conversation that they weren't having, not even because the men probably wouldn't have listened or wouldn't have wanted to have it. It's just that those conversations did not happen. It was a systemic thing, from what I understand, as much as a cultural thing that, we just didn't, and, yeah, but yeah, uh, I don't know. I don't know because that's a couple of generations before me, but the music gives me an insight as to what was going on. And while I love and rock and roll is pile on fantasy, party, sex, drugs, rock and roll, it's all part of my rock and roll fantasy type stuff, big and huge and all about dreaming. Country music was about what was really happening at this moment in any real time. And of course, the folk element of it was a blend of that because it was telling a story, usually of folk heroes or uh, a creation of folk heroes of one person, and they're going through this journey. Their name, the Ballad of Ode to Billy Joel. Um, Matthew was a country boy until one day he ran. That was a song Linda Ronstadt covered called um, Now Matthew was a country boy until one day he ran, or until one day he said that, or until one day he found that. Yeah, there we are. Now Matthew was a country boy until one day he found that cheating folks was easier than plowing his daddy's ground. And the song goes on to talk about how Matthew goes to uh, to go on to become a big man, but he crosses Big Jim, so Big Jim cuts him down. Either, you know what I mean? He's like, I'm assuming kills him, gets rid of him, something like that. I don't know, but he's out. And then of course, uh, Jim McCall, he was meek and small, and to become a man, he'd have to build himself up tall with fancy folks and plans. So he goes. So this is Big Jim cut him down, but then Big Jim's got his own story as Jim McCall. Uh, except he loses his children. His children leave him, and he's like, well, that's what my kindness brings. But yeah, they, whatever. And then, and then the third version of that, she's talking about lazy Susan stole the show. Said that she heard that the narrator stole the show. She's like, well, I don't know. So the song is called "In My Reply," but that's just one of those things that, like, so this rock music that's big party fantasy, and then we have the folk music that's telling the story of these true to life, or similes. They're true to life experiences, even if the characters are fictional. Uh, And then you have country music, which is pretty much the singer telling you, and the writer, their singer songwriter, just pretty much from a person point of view. Hey, I'm sitting here in this honky tonk, drinking whiskey and getting wasted and drunk because my significant other left me, and this is all that I am, and this is all I'm going to be. Now that is the plot of Loretta Lynn's uh, "Honky Tonk Girl," which was uh, the song that she wrote and recorded, and the one that just shot up the charts and became like a number 14 hit or something like that. So, and then it was great. Um, I think I've talked enough about this. Um, if you have any thoughts or views, any favorite Loretta Lynn songs that tie into a fun part of your life. It was a big part of my growing up. That movie, I loved it. It was great. Any of that touches you, and you want to comment about it? Feel free to do so. Mm. I'm gonna stop singing and playing for right now because I'm getting hiccups and I need to have a soda and a snack before I get ready for bed. I love you guys. Peace, love, and light. Good night.